We've got to do a better job. We got to hold the line. We've got to, at the very least, slow down the rate of growth. But I will tell you a story from the shutdown. During the shutdown, they sent a message to every representative's office, and they asked us to list who is essential and who is unessential on your staff. And I thought, there's a lesson we could learn here. Certainly there's a lesson here. So I asked my staff, I said, give me a list, not only for our office, but for the IRS, the EPA, OSHA, HHS. So I get the list, and I get the list from the IRS. 90% unessential. The EPA, 95% unessential. And I'm like, we got a lesson here. We're learning, we're coming something. But then I learned the trick was on me. The trick is those in Washington who manipulate the system for their own benefit, they know more than all of us combined. They manipulate and use the system because guess what? If you were declared unessential, you don't have to go to work, but guess what? You still get paid. It costs us money to have the government closed. The government's the only thing you can shut down completely, and it still costs more money than when it's open. It's a disgrace. But here's the thing. They were finally going through the rolls, and someone looked at the EPA and said, well, let's look at some of the individual employees. So they found a woman, hadn't been to work in 20 years. She had a chronic illness, and maybe she could work from home, but they looked for the last 5 years. She'd had no work product and no communication with work for 5 years. Still being paid more than $100,000 a year. In fact, of the unessential people in all the departments, there's 100,000 making over $100,000 a year who were declared unessential. So they found this woman, hadn't been at work in 20 years, hadn't even sent an email back in 5 years. So you'd think they'd fired her, right? No. She's a government employee. You can't fire a government employee. So they went down the list. They found another woman. She was selling jewelry and vitamins from her computer. She had hired 17 relatives, paid interns that she was taking care of. Well, you'd think they'd fire her? No way. You can't fire a government employee. They found one guy who's downloading porn 6 hours a day. You'd think, for goodness sakes, they fired him. He still works at the EPA. But my favorite, or the most notorious of all of these, is Jonathan Beal. Jonathan Beal, they were looking through and they said, he's worked for 11 years for the EPA. He must be a stellar employee. Every review, every time he's passed review, he's gotten a bonus. Makes $150,000 a year. He's the right-hand man to Gina McCarthy. But he's never there. He hadn't been there in 3 weeks. He hadn't been there much in the last 6 months. He had whole periods of time of 6 months he hadn't been there. So they did something extraordinary. The investigator general called his boss. And his boss said, well, Jonathan Beal, he's a secret agent as well as an EPA agent. Really? He's a secret agent and an EPA agent. And they was like, but then they did something really extraordinary. They called the CIA. And they said, Jonathan who? So I'm just imagining this guy for 11 years, says he's a secret agent. I'm imagining him by his pool, which you bought and paid for. He's laying by his pool in the chaise lounge, and he's got a beer, and his boss calls and says, Jonathan, aren't you coming in? He's like, can't come in. I'm in Istanbul on secret assignment. The Democrats say there's nothing we can cut. It's been cut to the bone. Waste, there's no way we could cut anything. I sent the president a letter. I'm still waiting on a response. There's $100 billion unaccounted for. They spent it, but they don't know where. If you were simply to freeze hiring, just hire nobody new, just let the people who normally retire from the federal government retire, save $6 billion. We have $20 billion a year keeping up with unoccupied federal buildings. Janitorial, sweeping, carpeting, everything you do in a building with nobody in it. $20 billion. We give $20 billion directly in aid to corporations, big corporations. The top 100 companies in our country get on average $200 million a year. You know what I say? Why don't we start with corporate welfare? Let's end it all. So it is important which Republicans you send. I know you've just been through spirited primaries and that, but it is important. It's important you hold all of our feet to the fire, mine included. Make us do the right thing. If we want to win nationally, we're going to have to be a bigger, better, bolder party. This debate's going on nationwide. Some in our party say, oh, we need to dilute the message. We need to become Democrat light. I say we need to keep our message and be bolder with our message. To be bigger, we need new people. There's not enough of us. We need new people in our party. The party needs to look like the rest of America, white, black, brown, with tattoos, without tattoos. It needs to look like America. We're the party that believes in the Second Amendment. We don't give up on that. But we need to become the party that also believes in the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the Sixth Amendment, the First Amendment. There was something that was sent out by the Department of Justice, the current president's Department of Justice, saying who you should be aware of. These are the people that might be dangerous. Those who pay in cash, those who have multiple guns in the house, those who have more than 7 days of food in their house. That would be half of the state of Utah, okay? But the point is, we need to be aware of what justice is about, what the Bill of Rights is about. This is a message above and beyond our crowd that has normally been attracted to the Republican Party. This is a message for any minority, whether it's a minority, the color of your skin, or the shade of your ideology, whether you're black, white, brown, or whether you're a homeschooler, or whether you go to a church that believes in sin and good, wrong, bad. This is what the Bill of Rights are about. We need to take the message that we are the party of the Bill of Rights. We are the party of voting rights. We are the party of minority rights. Well, what will happen if Republicans take over? Number one, I tell you what, let's don't be the party that bails out banks and big business. Why don't we be the party that says, you know what? Why don't we read the bills before we pass them? I know that's pretty radical. Obamacare's 2,000 pages. If my rule were to pass, we'd wait 100 days, we'd read the damn thing, and we never would have passed it. I think we should have a rule that says Congress shall pass no law that they exempt themselves from. If we need to be a bigger, better, bolder party, we need to do it with optimism.